Here's why Vaemond Velaryon betrayed his own house with his speech in the throne room. In the intricate world of Westeros, loyalty is a currency as valuable as gold, and betrayal is a weapon as sharp as Valyrian steel. Few acts of treachery resonate as powerfully as the shocking speech delivered by Vaemond Velaryon in the Red Keep, a moment that would be remembered as both audacious and catastrophic. For Vaemond to turn his words against his own house in the very heart of the Iron Throne was more than just political theater. It was a betrayal that reverberated through the halls of power, reshaping alliances, testing loyalties, and threatening the very legacy of House Velaryon. To understand the gravity of this moment, we must first understand Vaemond himself. A scion of House Velaryon, Vaemond was a man raised amidst the opulence, influence, and ambition that defined one of the wealthiest and most powerful houses in Westeros. The Velaryons were known for their naval might, their ancient lineage intertwined with the Targaryens, and their loyalty to the crown, particularly the Greens during the Dance of the Dragons. Vaemond had grown up with a sense of responsibility to protect his family's honor, power, and legacy, and he was steeped in the political cunning necessary to navigate the treacherous waters of court life. And yet, on that fateful day in the throne room, Vaemond did something entirely unexpected. He delivered a speech that, on the surface, appeared to challenge the very faction he had been expected to support. Words of dissent, critique, and moral judgment flowed from him, undermining the positions held by his own relatives and allies. To the audience, the effect was jarring. A Velaryon, speaking against the strategy, the loyalties, and even the core principles of his house. To understand why this was considered betrayal, we need to examine the layers of context, motivation, and consequence surrounding this audacious act. Vaemond's speech was rooted in a deep-seated frustration with the direction his house had taken. While the Velaryons had historically aligned themselves with the Greens, supporting Aegon II's claim to the Iron Throne, Vaemond increasingly questioned the morality, prudence, and wisdom of this path. He saw a faction consumed by ambition, willing to manipulate, coerce, and even commit acts of extreme cruelty in pursuit of power. In his mind, the costs of blind loyalty were becoming painfully clear: the blood spilled, the families destroyed, and the honor of House Velaryon compromised. It is important to recognize that Vaemond's dissent was not born of cowardice or self-interest. On the contrary, it was a calculated moral stance, a recognition that the actions of the Greens threatened to unravel not just the political landscape of Westeros, but the ethical foundations upon which his family's honor rested. By speaking out, he was attempting to assert a conscience in a world dominated by ruthless ambition. Yet in doing so, he defied the expectations of his house, openly challenging relatives, allies, and leaders who had invested in his obedience and loyalty. The speech itself was a masterclass in rhetoric and conviction. Vaemond's words carefully balanced critique with reasoned argument, appealing to both logic and emotion. He highlighted the dangers of unchecked ambition, the moral consequences of betrayal, and the long-term ramifications of political violence. Each sentence was crafted to provoke thought, challenge assumptions, and force his audience to confront uncomfortable truths. To the untrained eye, it might have seemed like an act of bravery, but to House Velaryon, it was a direct affront to unity, discipline, and loyalty. The timing of Vaemond's speech amplified its impact. Delivered in the throne room, the very epicenter of power in Westeros, the act was public, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. Every noble present, from the most powerful lords to the most ambitious courtiers, witnessed a Velaryon openly questioning the faction's strategy. This was not a private conversation, nor a subtle whisper behind closed doors. It was a declaration, a confrontation, and a defiance of authority all at once. By choosing the throne room as his stage, Vaemond ensured that his words would reverberate far beyond the walls of the Red Keep. From a political standpoint, the speech was a gamble. By criticizing the Greens, Vaemond risked alienating allies, inciting the ire of influential leaders, and destabilizing the carefully constructed power structure his house had relied upon for generations. In the eyes of his family, this was reckless, disloyal, and dangerous. His father, his cousins, and other key figures in House Velaryon had invested in loyalty as both a strategic and ethical principle. By deviating from this path, Vaemond was perceived as a traitor, willing to sacrifice family unity for a moral stance that, while principled, threatened their collective ambitions. But why did Vaemond feel compelled to take such a drastic step? To answer that, we must examine the personal and political pressures he faced. As a member of a house entwined with the Targaryens, Vaemond was intimately aware of the stakes. He had watched the civil war unfold, witnessing the human cost of political machinations, the devastation of families torn apart, and the erosion of moral boundaries in the pursuit of power. His loyalty to his house was not absent, but it was increasingly in tension with his desire to act ethically, to protect innocence, and to assert a vision of honor that transcended factional loyalty. In this sense, Vaemond's speech can be understood as an attempt to reconcile competing obligations: loyalty to family, responsibility to the realm, and adherence to personal moral principles. It was a high-risk attempt to influence the course of events, to mitigate the damage caused by factional ambition, and to assert a voice of reason amidst chaos. And yet, in doing so, he knowingly endangered his standing, his alliances, and the trust of those who relied upon his obedience. The reaction to the speech was immediate and intense. Shock rippled through the throne room as nobles processed the audacity of a Velaryon openly challenging the Greens. Whispers of betrayal, incredulity, and outrage filled the chamber. Otto Hightower and other senior figures recognized the implications instantly. A fracture within a loyal house could embolden enemies, destabilize strategy, and shift the balance of power in ways that were difficult to predict. Vaemond's words, though principled, had introduced uncertainty and risk into a conflict that thrived on control and predictability. Yet, beneath the surface outrage, there was an undeniable brilliance in Vaemond's approach. By framing his dissent as a plea for reason, he highlighted the strategic and ethical flaws in the Greens' approach, forcing leaders to confront the consequences of their ambition. While his speech challenged authority, it also demanded consideration, reflection, and acknowledgement of the human cost of unchecked power. In this way, Vaemond walked a fine line between rebellion and counsel, defiance and diplomacy, a line that few could navigate successfully in Westeros. The betrayal, then, is both a matter of perception and consequence. To his house, Vaemond had undermined loyalty, cohesion, and strategic alignment. He had spoken against the faction that defined their power, directly challenging the vision that Otto and others had invested in. Yet from another perspective, Vaemond's actions were courageous, principled, and potentially necessary. He had recognized a moral imperative, acted upon it in a public forum, and risked personal and familial consequences to assert a vision of honor and justice. This tension, between loyalty and conscience, strategy and morality, is at the heart of why Vaemond's speech is remembered as both a betrayal and a defining moment of ethical courage. Westeros, after all, is a land where ambition often overrides principle, and where those who act on conscience are frequently labeled as traitors. Vaemond's actions challenge this norm, forcing us to consider whether betrayal is determined by perspective, by consequence, or by the alignment of moral and political interests.